Okay, in this video, we're going to be looking at the fills and structure to Reggae 1 drop. So right at the beginning, you'll notice there's a little part written that says rim shots. So we want to hit rim shots for that whole first bar, okay? So we have drag on 1, and then a triplet over beats 2 and 3 on the snare. Again, rim shots here. Crash, snare, and kick on beat 4. I'm going to play crotchets on the hi-hat to give you a time reference, okay? So here's what that whole bar sounds like. And that is a big impact to start. It's fortissimo and it's rim shots, alright? That's going to wake you up if you've not had your morning coffee. So then we go into our groove that we talked about in the last video. So we bring it down quite a bit from fortissimo down to mezzo forte. And on the 8th bar of the groove, we have a small fill. 1, 2, 3, 4, and. So that's 2 semiquavers on beat 3 on the snare. And then we hit on beat 4 and ah. This is a little bit strange because this is the first time where we lose that triplet feel. So on beat 3, instead of a triplet, 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a, it goes to a straight semiquaver feel. So 1 and a 2 and a 1E and a 2 and a. It's quite tricky, but if you listen to the backing track, that rhythm is hitting the track. So if you're struggling to change from the triplet to the semiquaver feel, just listen to that track and that'll put you in the right direction. So there are 2 pages to this piece, but you should have another page that says fills for reggae. Now we have 2 fills that are written, and this is the first place you can use one of those fills. So let's take a look at both of those fills first of all now. So for our first fill, we have a rest on beat 1, and then we have 1 and on the snare, and then we have 1 and on the tom, 1, 2, 3 on the floor tom. So rest on beat 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and Let's hear what that sounds like. Now, the sticking with this one, if you look at what you're going to be playing, if we play this in our first solo bar, we go back to the rhythm, okay? After that, we go back to our groove. So we need our right hand to be over on the hi-hat. So what I would suggest is when we get to our triplet on the floor tom, instead of going right, left, right, and then we need to bring our hand all the way over, go right, left, left, and you can bring your hand over while the left hand is still playing, okay? So let's have a look at that. I'll play the fill, and then I'll go over to the hi-hat so that you can see how you can bring your hand over and still keep that triplet going. And now up to tempo. We'll add that fill into the solo in the chart. So I'll play you 2 bars, starting from 1 bar before the solo. So after that, we go back to our groove. And remember, like I pointed out in the groove video, it's slightly different here because we don't have an open hi-hat at the end of the first bar, okay? The open hi-hat is only at the 2nd bar. And now on our 4th bar of going back to the groove, we have these hits. Ba, 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 da, ba. Again, it's that semiquaver feel. So it's just like the bar before the solo. Now because these are nice and short, I would recommend just playing them on the snare. I play them on the snare with a kick on every crotchet. So here's what that would sound like. Then we go back into our groove. We've got 2 more bars of groove. 3rd bar, and then on the 4th bar, we have solo for 3 beats of the bar. So on the first beat of the bar, we have 1E on the snare, our 2 semiquavers again. Now, this is a perfect place to use fill number 2. It fits in here perfectly because it starts with 2 semiquavers on the snare drum, and then we have a crotchet triplet starting on beat 2 and a crash on beat 4. Now this is the same rhythm as our fill at the intro, except we're playing this triplet all as flams. So it's a flam on the snare, flam to tom, flam on the snare, and then crash, snare, kick. Okay? So here's what that bar on its own sounds like. And when we play this bar, the solo, notice the dynamic changes to forte. And we keep that forte dynamic going back into the groove. Again, the groove is slightly different here. we have the open hi-hat at the end of the first bar, but not at the end of the second bar. And now after 6 bars of the groove, we have a fill on the 7th, all on the snare, with the kick on beat number 1. Da ga da 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 da. So that bar on its own. And then the next bar, we have flams again, moving around the kit. So we have a crotchet triplet, but we have a rest on the first beat of that triplet. The second beat is on the snare, third beat is on the tom, and then beat 3 is on the floor tom, and our crash kick snare on beat 4. That bar on its own. And now those 2 bars together. Alright, so that leads into our solo rhythm. Now if you look at your Fills for Reggae page, you have something nicely written out for you there that you can use here. Now this is kind of like a shuffle groove. So we have our shuffle hi-hat, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and And then we have our snare on 2 and 4. And then our kick is quite busy. Slowly, I'll play you the first 2 bars of the solo rhythm. Now if you notice on that second bar, our kick plays on 1, and then after beat 2, it's all on the upbeat. 2 and 3 and 4 and Okay? And then on bar 3, it's similar, but we have an open hi-hat on beat 4. And then on bar 4, a half bar of groove, and then our fill on beats 3 and 4. 3 and 4 and Snare, snare, kick, snare, snare, kick. So here's what bars 3 and 4 of the solo rhythm sound like on their own. Alright, so now we're going to put all 4 bars of our solo rhythm together, and I'll speed it up a little bit. Just for fun, we're going to add in that 2 bar fill before the solo rhythm, okay? I'm going to play 6 bars here, starting with 2 bars before the solo rhythm. This is a lot going on here, so you can take your time, pause this video, go and practice it, come back, because that's going to take some time to get that done, okay? But if you're ready, we can look at the solo kit part now. So we have 2 bars here where we can play something, and we have something nicely written out on our Fills for Reggae sheet. 1 and 2 and a triplet, 1 and 2 and a triplet. Okay? So it's the same rhythm over the 2 bars, we just play it differently around the kit. So bar 1, beat 1 is all on the snare, beat 2, triplet on the tom, and then we go round the toms with our crotchet triplet. Small tom, middle tom, floor tom. So that bar on its own. And in the second bar, same rhythm, remember, we're going to move our left hand up to the tom and keep our right hand on the snare. 1 and 2 and a triplet. Okay? So it's just going snare, tom, snare, tom, snare, tom. Flam on the snare, flam on the small tom, then flam on the floor tom. Okay? So here's that bar on its own. And now the 2 bars of solo kit. We're almost out of the busy section. We have 2 more bars before we go back to our groove. So all on the snare. On beat 1 we have a triplet. 1 and 2. Kick on beat 3. 4 we have a triplet again. And then on beat 1 single hit. Beat 2 we have snare, tom, snare. We have a triplet there. And then we have a crotchet triplet with the hi-hat and the snare on the first beat of that triplet. And then beats 2 and 3, the bass drum comes in too. So slowly, here's what that 2-bar phrase sounds like. So this is another part where the sticking is interesting, because if we just go alternate, when we get to beat 2 of bar 2, we're starting on the right hand, so we're going to go snare, left hand on the tom, right hand on the snare, and then we have a snare and hi-hat. And because we're going into the groove, it makes sense to be in the position we're going to play the groove. You've got to quickly, from beat 2, go triplet 1. So don't get your hands tied up. Your left hand's going to be up at the tom, and then you're going to have to bring your right hand over your left and your left down to the snare. So this whole section, I'm going to start from 2 bars before solo rhythm, and I'm going to play right up until we go back to the groove, and I'm going to play it up to tempo. So this is the busiest part of all the pieces we've looked at in Advanced Higher. You're going to have to break it down. Don't just try and play the whole thing, okay? 1 bar at a time, 2 bars, build it up, okay? Take it slowly, make sure that you're playing it correctly. Don't just try and get to the next section. But when we do get to the next section, it's back to our groove and we bring it back down to mezzo forte. And like we talked about in the groove video, we move from the side stick to just regular snare. So we play 6 bars of that groove. Bar 7, just like before, we go 1, 2, da 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 da. That's just like bar 8 from the very beginning. And then we have solo. So you can just play one of the fills that we've already done. In my playthrough video, I play fill number 1. I suggest that you can do the same, or you can play fill 2, or you could make one up, whatever you want to do. And then we go back to our rhythm. In the 4th bar of going back to the rhythm, we have the same hits as earlier. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we have 2 more bars of rhythm, and then we have some hits to finish. So we bring it up to fortissimo, and we have 1 E on beat 1, and now we can play anything we want, run beats 2 and 3, and then we have 4 E. It's like a drum sandwich. We got the same hits at the beginning as we do at the end, and we have 2 beats in the middle to play something. Now what's going to make the most sense is to play some triplets around the kit. So what I done was 2 on the snare, 2 on the high tom, 2 on the floor tom. So I'll play that bar with my fill to show you what kind of things you can play. And for our very last bar, we have a crotchet triplet with a rest on beat 1, and then 2 and 3 of that triplet are just the hi-hat and the snare. We have a rest on beat 3, and we finish just with the kick on beat 4. So you've got to count here to make sure that you don't bring that kick in early or late. Got to make sure it's right on beat 4. So the whole last 2 bars sound like this. And that's us run through the whole piece. There's not too many dynamics here, so try and make sure that the fortissimo is very loud. And make sure to really get those rim shots at the beginning. So go and practice, have some fun, and we'll see you in the next video.